I'm delighted to welcome you this evening to the second and final of our Leaders in Law lecture series for the current academic year, hosted by Birmingham Law School Centre for Professional Legal Education and Research. My name is Lyndon Thomas and I am head of that centre. Kepler extends a wide range of careers, pro bono and advocacy employability opportunities to Birmingham Law School students and utilises its unparalleled links with the legal profession and with the third sector and others to enrich the academic experience of our students and to enhance their professional development during their time with us. And our Leaders in Law lecture series is very much a part of that. We are delighted this evening to have the opportunity to share the groundbreaking and inspiring work of Justice Defenders. Justice Defenders is an organisation that we've worked with in a number of different ways at Birmingham Law School over the years, having hosted secondees to the UK, prison officers who have come to the university to learn more about public legal education and the impact that can have in prisons. And we've also facilitated the members of the local Birmingham criminal law practitioner community visiting prisons in East Africa with Justice Defenders in order to assist in the development and delivery of their services over there. And it's an organisation that I've had the pleasure and the privilege of working with individually as well. And when I visited the prisons in Uganda and in Kenya, I've been hugely inspired by the work that they do, and I have no doubt that that will be your experience when you hear more about them this evening as well. We were due to hear from Justice Defenders founder and chief executive Alexander McLean this evening. Unfortunately, Alexander isn't able to join us, but we do have two extraordinary speakers from the organisation here to speak to you and tell us more about the work that Justice Defenders does and its mission. They are Miriam Wachira, Country Director for Justice Defenders in Kenya, and Pascal Kakuru, who is Justice Defenders Education, Support and Administration Officer. So before I hand over to them, I want to tell you a little bit more about each of them. So Miriam is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya with over 10 years experience in legal practice. She holds a Bachelor of Law degree from the University of Nairobi, an MBA from the University of East London, and a master's degree in international human rights from the University of Notre Dame in Indiana. She's worked with a number of different human rights organisations over the course of her career, and she now leads Justice Defenders staff and programmes in Kenya. Miriam is going to be speaking with Pascal Kakuru. Pascal is going to be speaking to us about his own experiences. So after being sentenced to death in Uganda in 2007, Pascal heard about Justice Defenders' work. He went on to study law. He successfully appealed his sentence and graduated with a law degree whilst he was in prison. Pascal was released in 2019 and he now works with Justice Defenders. I know that both Miriam and Pascal are really keen for this evening's event to be a discussion, and they'd really like to hear from you. In particular, they have a question which we've posted in the chat function that they'd love to hear your thoughts on, and it is this. As students, lawyers, lawmakers and judges, what can you do in your professional and personal lives that can ensure defenceless people are able to be in a position where they can improve justice systems? So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. We've posted it in the chat function so that you can refer to that throughout the talk. Please do pop your thoughts into the Q&A and we'll put some of those to Pascal and Miriam a little bit later on. Also, do post any questions that you have for them about anything they talk about or about Justice Defenders' work, because like I said, they'd like a discussion and they very kindly agreed to answer questions that you have. In a moment, I'm going to hand over, but before I do, two final things. The first of those is that this on the webinar this evening, we are obviously many of us here in the UK, but Miriam is in Kenya and Pascal is in Uganda. So that's an awful lot of technology that we're grappling with there. So if there are any technical hitches or internet blips, please do bear with us and we'll get them resolved as soon as we can, but hopefully it will all be plain sailing from here. And secondly, before Miriam speaks to you, she's asked us to play a short video to give some context to Justice Defenders' work. So we'll hear that now.
We believe that everyone should be treated equally in the hands of the law, regardless of their circumstances, or their income, or their personal background. We'll have just and fair societies when each person knows that the law is for them, that the law is something that they can understand and be part of. After more than 10 years of establishing prison libraries and clinics and working to improve healthcare and education, we asked, why is it that the prisons we work in are filled with poor people without access to lawyers? We saw whatever we did to improve their conditions, if they didn't feel they had justice, they wouldn't have peace. So we've shifted our focus. Now we train prisoners and prison officers as paralegals and put them through University of London law degrees, following in Nelson Mandela's footsteps.
Education, very important. It empowers you. You know, right now when I've gone through this paralegal training, I know my rights. And nobody can infringe that right. Because I know this is what I'm supposed to get, this is what I'm supposed to do.
So even if you don't know your own constitution, how can you be able now to understand how to do your own case in court? So that's the pandemic that you are facing. But thank God, with the enlightenment that we have now, I'm now aware of my rights. I'm now aware how I should do my case. I'm now aware how I should help out another person in his matter.
I did my diploma, I finished. I enrolled in 2014 and I finished my diploma and now I'm pursuing my law degree.
It's impossible to do this work without our financial supporters. In investing in this community, in helping to secure fair hearings and justice for those who don't know where to turn, you'll be changing families and lives for generations to come.
And without further ado, it's my very great pleasure to hand over to Miriam. Miriam, thank you very much for being here with us this evening.
Thank you, Lyndon. It's also my pleasure to be with you this evening. Thanks for inviting us as Justice Defenders to join this talk or to give this talk. We do work together with allies, so I'm hoping by the end of this talk we'll have more allies joining Justice Defenders. As you have seen from the video, our work focuses on offering legal services to those in prison. We do run two programs. One is the education program, where we empower those in prison with law degrees or legal education so that they are able to offer services to their fellow inmates. The second program that we run is a practice program. That is where we train paralegals who we take the inmates and prison officers. We train them as paralegals, and then we open for them legal offices, or you can call them mini law firms in prisons. And from there, they're able to offer their fellow inmates, the prison community, legal services. We are currently about a community of about 350 people working to bring justice. We are working from Uganda. That is where our work first started, with the libraries, with the education and the medical program. But with time, we did shift, as our founder said, from all those to offering just legal services. So we moved from Uganda and came to Kenya also. We have about 25 prisons between Kenya and Uganda. We recently, last year, actively expanded into the Gambia. So in the Gambia, we are now currently moving into the third prison within the Gambia. We have also received a lot of requests, interests from other countries. It is clear that the justice gap in the world, and especially in the low-income countries, that the justice gap is huge. And we have had many requests for us to go in there and to help cover the gap. Recently, we visited Nigeria just to see how we can collaborate. That was actually an invite by the government. But also you'll discover that the justice gap is even in the developed world. We have had quite a number of requests from the US asking us to go in and help do what we do in Africa or in East Africa, whether we can help them do that. So it's just a show that the justice gap in the world is still huge, and there's a lot of work to be done. As justice defenders, we work to change the mentality that the law is only for the rich. In our countries, we see that most of the poor people, the law seems to act against them rather than for them or protecting them. So it is always against them. Whereas we see the rich are able to use the law to their advantage, whether it is in taxes or, getting to services. But we see that for the poor, they're suffering. For instance, in Kenya, we have a very high level of illiteracy level within our prisons. So you'll find that those in prison are the very poor in our community, and also the very illiterate. That means that they're not able to afford a lawyer. So, and because of that, they don't know, what is happening. I've gone into prison and I've met somebody and asked them, why are you in prison? And they're not even sure of the charge they are charged with. Also that our law is still the colonial law that we borrowed from British, which means that our laws are still in English, our court process are in English, and yet here we are talking about somebody who has never been to a class or a very low grade of education. You see, most of the time, even for I, who is a lawyer, going to court, you feel anxious, or even as, everybody feels anxious, even for those who are very educated. So you can imagine this woman whose first time they're appearing before a court and charges are being read in English. How are they supposed to understand, or how are they able even to tell their story? So for justice defenders, we work to help everyone access the power of the law, and also to be able to tell their story in court. That is our main agenda, that everybody is able to tell their story when they come to court. So the paralegals help their fellow inmates to understand their cases. They sit down with them, go through their file, go through their witness statements, help them come up with questions on areas like cross-examination questions, and they get them ready for court, even with like the very court etiquette. So our value puts the defenseless at the heart and soul of our work. That is where we see our work coming in, that the very defenseless in our community are able to access justice. We are trying to reach as many people, but also our paralegals have done some tremendous job, actually beyond what we had expected. Sometimes back, part of our LLB class did file a petition, the first one that actually declared death penalty, illegal. And with that, with so many people in Kenya leave prison, being able to apply for resentencing. And with that, we actually now have so many people leaving prison. For instance, in Kenya, we now have so many graduates who have left prison because we are able to apply that law and argue their cases and get out. Most recently, one of our graduates, two actually of our graduates, did file a petition also in the High Court, looking into issues of those mentally ill persons in prison. So in Kenya, if you are declared guilty but mentally ill, you're sentenced to serve under presidential pleasure. That is literally a life sentence in Kenya, because nobody knows when the president will, exercise that pleasure. So people end up being in prison for a very long time or indefinitely because of that. Our class, our paralegals and our graduates were able to make an application to courts. And with that, that provision was declared redundant and unconstitutional. So the Attorney General and Parliament were asked or ordered by the court to make laws, to amend that law and to make arrangements for all those who have been serving at a presidential pleasure for their sentence to be relooked. So we see our work going beyond just the person we serve in prison. We're also impacting the society and also changing policies. I don't want to talk too much because with me today is Pascal. Pascal is one of us, he's one of the justice defenders, and I think he's even in a better place to explain to us what justice defender is all about. Welcome, Pascal.
Thank you, Miriam.
All right, thank you. Pascal, would you like to share with us your story?
Wow, wonderful. It's my pleasure always to share my experience and what I've gone through. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are making this call. My name is Pascal Kakuru, as introduced, working with and for justice defenders based in Kampala, Uganda. And I basically work in the education department and do admin work at the same time. Thank you, Miriam, for your exposition about what Justice Defenders does. That's great. Personally, as you've heard, I'm a person with lived experience, having been incarcerated in Uganda for a period of more than 14 years. Spent some 2 years on remand. I spent some 6 years on death row, of course, having been sentenced to death. 6 years of no appeal. Fortunately, my case appeared for hearing on mitigation for resentencing, and I happened to get a manageable term of imprisonment of 18 years, which I served subsequently, and I got released. But prior to that, of course, during all that time of my pre-trial, post-trial, pre-appeal, of course, it's a long period of time. Over 8 years, you're waiting for justice to be done. So a lot of injustices, a lot of unfairness, as of course Miriam has put it, in most of the developed countries. You realize that most of the people in the prisons are the poor people, are the paupers who can't afford services of private lawyers. So of course, I observed a lot. Personally, in my case, I observed a lot of injustices and unfairness, and of course, this one caused me an urge to see what we can do and what we can cause indeed. And it was a blessing in the year 2008. I just got to encounter with Mr. Alexander McKenna, as a young man passionate about justice and the plight of inmates. We got in touch and we encouraged one another. During their programs, different activities they were doing to empower inmates, to empower people who are basically on death row. By then I was on death row. People who are hopeless, people who don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, who are just there on the mercy of the state. And of course, getting involved in the education activities, Pascal for rehabilitation, that make sure we add value to ourselves. So in 2012-2013 academic year, there was a need to cause a change, and we had to delve into studying law. Unfortunately, our local institutions could not allow us to put it. Law is for a class of people who are well off, who are from classified families, royal families, and so most of the institutions were not willing to offer inmates, and above all inmates on death row, to study law. But thanks to the University of London and working hand with Mr. McLean, they accepted to give us an opportunity to test and we see. And we tested the waters, and indeed we proved that indeed we are able to make it. And as pioneer students, we made it. We studied law. Of course, in the process, we are in a position to help our colleagues reading their cases, identify legal issues, grounds of appeal, women of appeal, I mean, giving them hope, sensitizing them, giving them knowledge to know what to do in court, even if lawyers may not be doing the best at that material point in time. But once the prisoner, once the convict, once the suspect knows what to do, it becomes good. That's what we are doing as students, and we did a lot of work. People getting bails, people getting their cases had on appeal, others had no records of their cases and proceedings. All those were looked into because they got to know what is required. And if somebody, for example, has been waiting for appeal, has never lodged the memorandum of appeal, not even notice of appeals in the existence, how do you expect somebody to have his appeal heard? So it is through that kind of sensation education that we got many people having access to justice. And we continue the same trend. When we came out of the throw, went in the normal imprisonment, wanted to studying the level of a bachelor's degree, we excelled and we continued working. And as Miriam has put it, eventually in 2018, our legal work, which was formerly done informally, was institutionalized when we had called them legal clinics, now we call them legal offices by justice defenders. And the work was recognized in the prison institution, was recognized by lawyers, was recognized by court, and we started working, and we saw tremendous work being done. And as I speak right now, inmates are no longer people who don't know what to do. Inmates are no longer people who are just there in darkness. They know what to do. They have been empowered. They know their rights. They know what expected in court. They know court procedures. They know the processes. They know each and everything. Cutters of work for justice defenders. And as Miriam has put it, there is a lot to be done. There is a lot to be done. Basically, personally, what I'm doing, I'm not directly in the legal practice in terms of legal aid, but my work basically is to educate through offering legal courses, especially the Bachelor of Laws, training paralegals, skills of advocacy, drafting, writing documents, and general knowledge about the law. That's what basically I do. And eventually we have seen our paralegals, both as graduates, both as law students, as ordinary paralegals who may not be doing formal education in law, and they have done great work. We see a lot going on, petitions going on, people getting their death sentences overturned maybe to life or to manageable terms of sentence, people getting bail, people having their sentences reduced, and it brings hope. It brings hope, and we see the people, of course, who were neglected, who didn't know what to do at the moment. They know what to do. They know what is expected of them. They know, they help the lawyers. In fact, I normally use this phrase that you help a lawyer help you. Sometimes the lawyers don't have enough time to read the cases. They have a lot to do, both in and outside. But once an inmate, they have the records of proceedings, they have read it through, they have identified the grounds of appeal, they have loopholes here and there, it becomes easy for the lawyers, for these advocates, more especially who are state-funded, and even for justice defenders to make sure they go into their cases easily, and at the end of the day, justice is being done. So basically, that is me, Pascal. But I'm very grateful to justice defenders because they've made me what I am, to help others in one community, back in the prisons, and everywhere. And we still really see great work coming on board. Briefly, that's for now. I'm not commercial continuous, but that's my simple story, and that's who I am. That's where I've come from, and where I am. And of course, I see a lot ahead, and I'm aspiring to go for a back course very soon as the Lord lives, to make sure I also sit in the temple where justice is served, to serve justice and to advocate for people who need it. Thank you, Miriam and Linden.
Thanks, Pascal. Just one question, Pascal. Would
Yes,
you
please.
say you having experience in justice has put you in a better position to effect long-term changes in a justice system?
Of course. You know, the eyes that have cried see better. When we talk about corruption in the justice system, I know what it means. When we talk about lawyers doing shadow work, not researching, I know what it means. When we talk about the miscarriage of justice, I know what it means. When we talk about somebody staying on remand, I know what it means. When we talk about having their records of appeal missing, I know what it means. So as advocates, as people have gone through the real thing, we know, and personally, I know exactly what to be done. Where is the problem? Of recent, there is a matter I was pursuing for one of the girls in the women's prison, and this girl had been in prison for over 6 months, just on a petty offense of theft of a phone. And the people, their relatives didn't know what to do, and of course, due to COVID restrictions and whatnot, she couldn't appear in court, and on Zoom, neither physically. But what we did was to follow up with the prosecutors to know what is the problem. And we had to see that this girl is brought, and the relatives didn't know what to do. We told them what to do. They came and they stood for the girl, and she's now a free person. But if they were to stay back, not knowing what to do, and even the prisoner has not known what to do, she would by now even still be in prison, or even at the end of the day be convicted. So we know what to do. We know whom to speak to. The registrars, the concerned people, the clerks, where do files get mixed up? For example, files get lost because somebody has not put in a notice of appeal, somebody has not put in one of appeal. The presumption is you have not appealed. So if such a situation happens, I know what to do. I know what to tackle and make sure the process moves. Not speak to. I mean, when I'm speaking about it right now, I'm speaking from an important point of view. I'm not just told. I know what I'm talking about with evidence and all the aspects of the law. Basically, I feel that having gone through the injustice system and the miscarriages around, I'm better placed. So I'm yearning to go and study for a backwards to practice law. Thank you.
Thank you, Pascal. My final question. What does it mean to you to be a justice defender?
Wonderful. Thank you, Miriam, once again. To be a justice defender, one is to put myself in the shoes of this person who's facing injustice, who's defenseless, who can't afford to pay a lawyer, who can't even have people to stand for him or her surety. And you put yourself in the shoes of that person. You have that kind of empathy in doing that. Even if you are not paid, even if you may be constrained one or another, but if you put yourself in the shoes of that person who's facing injustice, who's completely green, like the boy you mentioned, we have the same problems in Uganda, and our petition is ongoing. People who have psychiatric issues, they don't know why they're in prison. You see them loitering around, they know what happens the next day. No, so such a people, if you put yourself in their shoes, you speak for them. One, you advocate for them. And even educate people, sensitize them, empower them to understand that their rights to trial, their rights along with the way. I mean, to me, that's what it means to be a justice defender. And of course, not only even the people in prison, even the broader community, there are people who are outside there and they know what to do. Stand in there, put yourself in their positions, and then you'll be able to do what you can do as somebody who's informed, who's knowledgeable on matters of the law and the justice system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pascal. Thank you for telling us your story, agreeing to open up and tell us about your life and what you do. We really do appreciate you being part of Justice Defenders. As Justice Defenders, we are a community, as we said. We have students, we have paralegals, we have advocates, we have lawyers, we have judges as part of us, we have business people. So we work in allyship with everyone in the community who is willing and ready to support in covering or making sure that people access justice. So thank you. Lyndon, I want to throw it back to you for any questions that have come up.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Pascal, very much for speaking with us. And Pascal, thank you especially for sharing your story and your insights. We do have some questions coming through. Before I go to those, I just want to remind everyone who's watching at home that we'd love to hear your thoughts on the question that Miriam and Pascal have posed for us, which is, as students, lawyers, lawmakers, judges, what can you do in your professional and personal lives that can ensure defenceless people are able to be in a position where they can improve justice systems? So please do get typing, plus any questions that you've got for Miriam and Pascal as well. If I can begin by asking a question, Chair's privilege. you've just spoken, Miriam, about how you work in allyship, and clearly one of the key organisations that you need to work in allyship with is the prison service and the prisons. And I wondered if either of you can just tell us a little bit more about that relationship and how the prison service feels and works with justice defenders on the work that you do. I think Miriam might have frozen. So Pascal, could I come to you first of all, please, to your experiences of that?
Thank you. Thank you, Lyndon, for your question. The prison service, of course, the key that the main stakeholders work with, because they're the ones who hold and house the defenseless people in their defenseless communities. So first of all, the prisoners open for us the gates. They allow us in the prisons, because without them opening the gates, that open door policy of theirs, we can't access inmates. We can't do anything there. If they become so strict in their censorship, our work becomes difficult. So they allow us access to the prisoners and to the prisoners and the inmates. Two, they give us information. They give us information because they are good keepers and custodians of records of each and every inmate, whether a convicted person or on appeal or who is still in remand. So they give us information. They give us data, which is very crucial for us. Two, they help us because these are the ones who take prisoners to court. Some of them, we train them as, of course, as our graduates. Some of them are our graduates already. Some of them are our students. Some of them are our paralegals. So their involvement, their participation is very important to advise audiences and inmates. So as advocates, I mean, they would be jailers, legal advisors. When they take inmates to court, they also informed, because if they studied law, their legal knowledge, their exposure to matters of law is raised. And for that matter, they have importance as custodians who speak, who handle, who deal with inmates. They know matters of human rights, of dealing with inmates. Is very crucial. Of course, another important aspect is at the policy level, right? Coming to a moment of understanding what justice defender is expected to do, their obligations, their role, and what the prisoners are supposed to do, bearing in mind issues of security, issues of safety, among other things. Of course, government policies, make sure you strike a balance. At the end of the day, you don't overstep your mandate. And so that's how the prisoners in one order support us to make sure our work becomes very easy and as we move along. Maybe I can see Miriam is back. Miriam, from your senior position, you may add on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. We work very closely with the prison services. Our work cannot happen without the support and the understanding of the prison services. So it's upon them, because our offices are within the prison, and we're talking about inmates, prisoners being given the privilege of, having a laptop, accessing internet, offering services to their fellow inmates. So we work a lot and very closely with the prison services to ensure that our services continue smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And one more question, if I may, which is how does justice defenders go about selecting the paralegals and the students that study on your programs? Because they clearly have such a pivotal and key role to play in the service delivery. So how do you go about that process?
I'll take that. Thanks for that. So when we move into a new prison and we are starting our program, we give what we call a call for application for paralegals, those who are interested. We do have requirements right from education standards, because this is a person who we expect that they will be able to read legal documents which are in English. So we do have a standard of education, but also most importantly, we look at motivation. Why do you want to join us? Secondly, discipline. We need the prison services to actually give an approval for you to join. So once we have shortlisted, we actually do interviews, physical interviews for the paralegals, and those who qualifies, then we hand their names to the prison services for their approval of that list. So that is how we get to select those who will be paralegals, and then later on, when we have like an intake for UOL, we look at those who have been active as paralegals and they have shown capability of studying law at a higher level. Yeah, thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. And just picking up on Pascal's response to the previous question, I can remember when I was doing some work with justice defenders in some of the prisons in Kenya, seeing in the classroom some of the prison officers and the prisoners side by side in the classroom, working together, collaborating, helping one another with their work, correcting one another when there were points that they hadn't quite understood. And it was it was really impressive to see that positive relationship and how much both parties were getting from it. So absolutely. We've had some thoughts come in response to your question. So some really good thoughts here. I shall read them out to you if I may, and then it would be great to hear what you think about what people are suggesting. So Arathi has said, lawmakers ought to adopt a collaborative approach with key stakeholders who have access or find themselves in contact with the defenceless. Through this collaboration, lawmakers can identify the gaps that may impede a defenceless person's experience of justice. For example, is this institution not transparent or open to scrutiny? Does the institution suffer from a lack of funding, which reduces the opportunity to provide education, legal clinics, and training to staff in these institutions? So some really good suggestions there about how the people who are responsible for making the law need to be working alongside and understanding the work of other key stakeholders. Miriam, Pascal, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, that is right. Maybe the only thing I could add is that maybe due to the low literacy level, when we are making laws, for instance, in Kenya, and there's public participation, call for public participation, really do the majority of people know that that law is being passed, or they actually have an opportunity to give. And maybe it's because we are too busy fighting poverty that, that is not a priority. People are thinking, I want to survive today. Do I have time to read pages and pages of legal jargon that maybe they do not understand? So as much as would want a lot of participation, there's still a lot of civil education that needs to be done for people to understand their role when it comes to lawmaking.
Absolutely, thank you. And do you have any thoughts on, or maybe the people who are watching might have some thoughts on whose responsibility that civil and civic education is as well, for people to understand more about the justice system. Another suggestion in response to your question, and then we'll come to another question for both of you. But Constantina has said, I think firstly, we need to listen. We aren't all from the same racial, economic, ethnic, and cultural backgrounds. So it's vital to the work needed within the justice system that we're open to listen to each other's experiences and be empathetic to the differences these experiences present. With that in mind, as professionals in this field, we must use these experiences as tools and guides for identifying injustice and a way to collectively work towards breaking down the issues and institutions that allow the perpetuation of injustice and discrimination towards individuals and groups of individuals. That really resonated with one of the points Pascal made earlier about the importance of empathy. I wonder if any of you have any comments or thoughts on that. So we need to start with listening and trying to understand other people's backgrounds.
Yes, I agree. There's a space or the need to listen more deeply and also empathize with those who are experiencing the system. As Pascal said, for instance, when the laws are made, or when you look at those who are studying law, who sit at the tables where justice is served, are not the same people who really get affected by the law, you know, on a daily basis. So it is a common citizen who experiences the law maybe in a different way. As a lawyer, the way I would experience law is quite different from somebody who has not studied law, or it's the first time they are being arrested, you know, and being taken to police station. They don't even understand what a charge is. So yes, there is that need of listening to those who are affected by the law. Pascal, do you have an addition?
Yeah, thank you so much, Miriam. Yeah, of course, the other aspect I would like to talk about this aspect of collaboration with the key stakeholders. Yeah, we have had situations whereby the judges interact with people in advocacy, like with the justice defenders, and because we are on the grassroots, we know these people, we have heard from them, we have had these trainings, and it looks funny for justice defenders to organize the judges training or conference. It is out of such that the judges who up there get to know what happens in the ground. They get to know the people's affairs are missing. They get to know that people have taken 10 years on remand. They get to know that some other people have not had an opportunity to have their appeals heard. So it is very crucial to have such a kind of collaboration and make sure that the voices of the people on the ground, the innocent, the other one, the simple and the humble, their voices can be heard. It's very great, and I think it would be something important to consider in terms of policies, in terms of lawmaking at different levels, the legislature, the judiciary, even the executive at some point, who are key people who suggest the law and policies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pascal. Another question for you both, which is, obviously, the last 2 years, the world has changed dramatically for all of us. And I wondered how justice defenders adapted when COVID-19 hit, and how the pandemic has changed the services and the way that you work. Miriam, can I start with you?
Yes, of course, when the pandemic came, it really did affect our work. But we quickly shifted the way we operate and how we did our activities. So, for instance, we quickly moved our education program to online. And then we had, for instance, the paralegal training became an online program. We did have computers. We quickly sourced more computers for the paralegals. And we fixed internet in the prisons that we were working in. That we did because one, also the courts moved online, you know, it became a digital justice. So for our clients to access justice, to access courts, they needed internet. So we swiftly moved everything to digital. Most of our programs are actually now digitalized. One of the beautiful things I keep saying about the pandemic that brought us, our law students in Uganda and those in Kenya could, for once, sit in the same class with the same lecturer. For us, we saw, you know, that was quite a good shift. I know also the pandemic, many people said, oh, they felt alone or isolated. For us, somehow we felt more connected because I could call into prison and say, can I talk to the paralegals? And just like the same way we are talking here, we could talk. So we ended up feeling actually more connected because of the digital, digitally, you know, just being able to connect digitally brought us more close. We saw a bit of cost saving, whereas initially, if we are doing a paralegal training, would go to a specific prison, do a paralegal training for 3 weeks, move to the next one. Now we could actually have 6 prisons sit in the same training with the same trainer. So that is how we adjusted our programs, and digital justice has become the in thing, and especially in Kenya, it was well received. A lot of cases moved online, and so yeah, many people are able now to access their judges online. Thank you.
Wow, that's a real shift, isn't it? And again, reliant on the prison support for increasing levels of technology within the prisons. Is that something? Are those changes likely to continue? Those new ways of working? Do you foresee that you're going to continue being able to do those going forwards?
Yes, we are not going backwards. I think, as you keep on saying, it's no longer the new norm. This is the norm, you know. There are things that we have learned and seen we can be more effective and more efficient with it. Recently, I attended a talk by our Chief Justice, and she was saying that actually digital is a way to go, and judiciary is really working hard in Kenya to go totally digital, or as much as possible to go digital. So yes, these changes are here to stay.
Great, thank you. Just a couple more questions, I think, to finish up, unfortunately, because our time is running away. So if you haven't yet put your question to us, do type it in the Q&A. A question for Pascal now, if I may, which is, Pascal, can you tell us a little bit about how your role has changed since you left prison? So how does the work that you were doing when you were in prison and working as a paralegal differ from the work that you're doing for justice defenders now?
Thank you very much, Linden. Of course, my work and my role has changed because when I was incarcerated, I was doing both legal aid, that's legal practice, and legal education. But now, when I shifted and I came out of the prisons and now in the free world, I'm doing more of education, matters of training, matters of recruitment, matters of interviewing, tutoring, what Miriam was saying about. I basically enjoy now online classes. I sit in my office in Kampala, I tutor people who are in Nairobi, people who are in Kamiti, people who are in Ngata, I mean, I enjoy it. So my work has shifted from being both legal aid and education to purely education and training. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think one final question from Alicia, who wants to know, is there any work that can be done in the UK to help justice defenders and the work that you're doing? So do you have volunteers from the UK working with the organisation, and what might we be able to do to help from where we're sat? Any suggestions?
Thanks for that question. Yes, before the COVID, we used to have a lot of volunteers come over to offer services or just to work in prison. It's something that we value because if, for instance, our founder McLean was not allowed to come for that gap year, we wouldn't be here talking about justice defenders. So we do value volunteers, and as I said at the beginning, we work in allyship. So there are different ways you could contribute, either through donation or through your time. But of course, currently, because of the many restrictions in accessing prison or travel, that might not be possible, but we are hopeful that soon that will open up too.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Maybe to add something right on that, given the new norm, not new normal. Still, if there are volunteers maybe in matters of education, still working online and virtually, they can still serve. They can teach, they can give their materials, terms of education, can give their experts who have had Council Kerry a number of times from UK, helping about trainings in mooting, in the paralegal work. So it is very possible still to be done digitally as we wait to see maybe if the prisons are open and prepare for it more. Thank you.
Thank you, Pascal. That's such a good point. With the increased use of technology, it makes the world a smaller place for all of us, doesn't it? And increases those opportunities for collaboration and allyship. I think that's a really excellent note on which to draw things to a close. Before we wrap up, a couple of final things from me. First of all, we are going to be sharing a slide that Miriam and Pascal kindly sent us with their contact details, and I know they are happy to hear from people with questions, suggestions, and ways that they might be able to work with justice defenders. So please do use those. That will pop up any moment. And all that it therefore remains for me to do is to say a huge thank you to Miriam and Pascal for giving their time this evening, for sharing with us the amazing work that they do and that Justice Defenders is doing. I think that Justice Defenders is an organisation which really embodies the concept of leadership in law, which is what this lecture series is all about. Miriam told us in her introduction that the organisation is receiving requests from around the world to take their model and to use it, and quite rightly so. So we look forward to continuing to support you, to seeing where the organisation goes from strength to strength. And thank you for your time this evening and for all the incredible work that we do. We wish you all the very, very best. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Pleasure. Good
evening. So much. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Pascal.
Most welcome.
There we are, and those are the details on the slide for anyone wishing to contact Justice Defenders. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.